Let's go. Let's go.
Yo, what up, SMT Nation? We have done it. We have arrived. It's the final edition of earnings, man. Oh, man, these are always a rough week or two. Full circle. We started with Verizon. Then it was AT&T. Then it was Big Cable, Comcast, and Rectum. And here we are. The apex. The terminus. The end game. Chernobyl. I welcome Moose. I welcome B. What's going on, boys?
Sneed, what's happening, man? Everything all right?
Excellent. How are you, sir?
Doing all right. It's been a good day. I'm exhausted, but I'm ready to talk.
Excellent, man. Glad to have you. What up, Moose?
Man, what a day. Or the T-Mobile, man. I'm telling you. The thongs are happy today.
Which color? I mean, we got what? Red panty night. We got the blue Speedo, and then we got the magenta thong. You know.
You know, magenta. The thongs are definitely happy today.
All right, let's just jump right into this, man. All right, here's the headline. All right. T-Mobile delivers industry-leading growth in customers, service revenues, and profitability in Q2, raises 24 customer and cash flow guidance. I got some good numbers. I think what we'll do is we'll take each segment that they have here on the presentation, and we'll just go through the details, and then if there's anything you guys want to tear down, we could do it. All right, so first thing. Postpaid net account additions plus 301,000, best in industry. They're the only company that actually reports this number. Now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever seen anybody else report it, but best in industry. Next one, postpaid net customer additions of 1.3 million, best in industry.
If nobody reports it, how do they know they're best in industry?
I mean, I guess, you go by like the average number of lines per account, and then you look at the postpaid or, net ads, and then you just like divide it,
So they just hypothesize?
I mean, nobody's ever pushed back on them, so I guess they get to wear that crown.
Interesting. All right. Go ahead.
But they do have publicly available how many accounts they have and how many lines they have all in. And
yeah, they do. Yeah.
Verizon has total connections.
Yeah.
But if you're best in the industry, you got to have something to compare it to.
Maybe that's something that AT&T and Verizon should start declaring then.
I mean, maybe they should after they disclose, how many consumer net ads were business versus consumer.
Right.
Nice little trade-off, right? Because nobody else reports that except for Verizon. So out of the 700 whatever thousand that they grew, how many of those were consumer? How many of those are business?
Yeah, it's a good question. 1.3 million net customer ads. They just crossed the 100 million postpaid customer milestone. They were happy and excited about that. Postpaid, we'll come back to that, by the way, Moose. You know why. Postpaid phone net customer ads of 777,000, best in industry. Highest Q2 in company history. Postpaid phone churn of 0.80. I think the closest was Spectrum. I think they added like 600 something thousand. AT&T came in just slightly more than half of this, and then I think the churn rate's interesting, sandwiched right in between Verizon and AT&T. AT&T at 0.70 and Verizon at 0.85.
I'm confused. On page 2 of the earnings, it shows what you just said was 0.80. But then if you look at the information that they have for the 6 months ending June 30th, it says that their postpaid phone churn was 0.83%, which is the same thing in line with 2023 at the same time. So was it 0.80 or 0.83?
Wait, are you saying the 2 quarters combined was 0.83?
So the 6 months ending June 30th, on page 2 of their document, it says in 2024, postpaid phone churn was 0.83%. In 2023, it was the same thing, so it was in line. Then in the bullets that you just read, it said that the phone churn was 0.80, an increase of 3 basis points year over year. So was it 0.80 or was it 0.83%?
We're looking at Q2 numbers, not the half.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So it's 2 different metrics. The Q2 was definitely better than the Q1.
Got it. Continue.
So they gave you the first half. Yep.
Got
High speed internet customer additions, 406,000. Best in industry, highest share industry net ads ever. That would be the fixed wireless access, 5G home internet. Okay. Let's go to the milestone that they hit. 100 million postpaid customer milestone.
And by the way, how many customers does Verizon have? This is a legitimate question.
The way that like T-Mobile's counting them and stuff.
Let's just say, connection, whatever the customers' connections, whatever the metric is.
Verizon reported just under 145 million.
145 million. Okay. So if T-Mobile is adding 4 million customers per year, we can estimate how many customers and how many quarters until T-Mobile surpasses Verizon.
If they continue this pace, which
Correct.
is already slowed down.
But hold up. What do you mean it's slowed down? This is a big quarter.
I agree. I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just going off of what they said. Like first half last year, for example, postpaid net accounts, postpaid net account additions, 586,000 in 2023 and 519 in 2024. Total net customer additions, they're saying 3,004 in 2023. In 2024, 2,689. Postpaid net customer additions, it was 2,854 in 2023. 2024, 2,558. So I can keep going, but things are starting to slow a little bit. So if the pace stays what it is that you're saying, maybe they do catch, but maybe they slow down, which is what it seems like they're doing right now.
Right. But then that just means that it's still inevitable because they are the largest.
Moose,
They
you
are
saying it would
capturing
just
the.
take a little bit longer
Yeah,
than
it'll take a
first
little bit
initially?
longer.
Yeah.
Right. But they're
It
still the
depends.
largest share taker.
I mean, yeah, you're right, but I mean, Verizon is now starting to grow. So they're starting to slow. Now Verizon's starting to grow. So I don't know. I mean, you're right. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't want to forecast. I'm not really sure. But it seems like Verizon's starting to catch their stride a little bit, and T-Mobile's starting to lose steam just a bit.
But
So I don't know.
the other thing that this is one of the first things that I think about. Okay, where are all of these customers coming from? And then, right before the podcast started, I was talking with Chacha. I was like, how many of these customers, how many of their 100 million base, right, Chacha, are free lines? This
I
is a
agree.
legitimate question now.
I agree.
How many are free lines? And by the way, how many of the net ads did Verizon and Xfinity are free lines as well? That's another question mark too, because Verizon and AT&T do not give free lines. Period. No discussion. No discussion. Verizon and AT&T do not do free lines. Correct?
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay. No discussion. Right. The only carriers that do free lines are T-Mobile, Spectrum, and Xfinity. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Regardless if it's in a promotional stage for Spectrum and Xfinity, they do free lines. That's how they equate to the gross ads, aka net ads, when it's the pluses minus the disconnects, right? So I know we've been talking about this for a while, but Chacha was alluding to in a couple podcasts ago, like a year ago, or maybe even 2 years ago, it might be anywhere between 25 to 35% of those 100 million customers are free lines.
And I think it's worth mentioning, Moose, how I came to that conclusion so the listeners
Go
understand.
ahead, yeah.
You look at the promotions that are actually built into the fabric of the website. You go into the store, you get priced by the retail store, employees at T-Mobile. What they do is they structure it so that if you're bringing over 3 or 4 lines, you're getting one free. So if you're coming in on a multi-line account, on average 3-4 lines, one of them is going to be free. So we can safely estimate that at the very least, there's about 25 to 30% of the T-Mobile, postpaid phone lines, they're not paid, they're free. So if you've got 100 million lines, I mean, I think a conservative number is 25 million are free. And
Yeah.
on the high end, it might be closer to 30 million because, there have been people who have taken advantage of free line opportunities that date back to the simple choice days. I mean, some people, Moose, they've got 9 lines on their account and 4 are paid. So for every account, that's one of the rarer deals, but that stuff does happen. There's people with 7 lines and 4 are paid. They got 3 free lines.
Right. And here's the other thing too. All those folks that were impacted by the price up, right? That the prices went up and they were only paying like $10 a line. Remember those people? Technically speaking, compared to the average ARPU, it takes like 3 lines for those people to actually equate to one regular paying line nowadays.
Yeah, we'll get to those financials too,
Right.
Moose, because there's some interesting numbers there. Let's
And
get to
the
the
other
super chat here real quick,
okay,
Moose. Shout out to Joel. Appreciate you, man. Member and supporter. What do you guys think T-Mobile is doing to grow the postpaid over the other carriers and others are struggling? What strategies are they using? So Joel, if I had to be, direct about this, I wouldn't describe the other carriers as struggling. I mean, if you look at their revenues and you look at their margins, I mean, they're better than T-Mobile's. You look at the free cash flow, and stuff like that. I mean, those companies are doing just fine. I don't think it's concern, because if you add a bunch of lines, but 25-30% of them are free and unpaid, I mean, that's the cost of doing business. Is in order to close an account, I got to give away a free line. It kind of takes the pizzazz away from all those net ads, right? So, like, basically what I'm saying is you got 777,000 net ads. 450,000 might be paid. 500,000 might be paid. Well, AT&T can do that and not give away free lines. They can give out free phones.
I wasn't gonna say anything, Sneed. I'm glad you did though.
Got to call a spade a spade. You got to give out something to get that growth. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's all I think it is. And I think continuously you see T-Mobile with, promotional offers that get people into introductory rate plans that save them money compared to the lines and the accounts they have with the other guys. So let's say that there's a 4-line account at AT&T. They're paying $200. They go to a T-Mobile store. They say, hey, I want to switch. Give me a better deal. The T-Mobile rep says, how much were you paying? The customer says, I was paying $200. They get them in a plan for $180. They get them in a plan for $170. They say, okay, I can save you 15%. I can save you 20%. And, people will switch for that. And it doesn't mean they get to keep them. They could leave, the service doesn't work, or they come back for a phone deal from AT&T or something like that. That stuff does happen. But those opportunities are created by the perception that they're going to get a cheaper plan. And, if they get a premium plan, they get upsold. The retail sales reps, they tell them, we're going to give you the best phone deals and all this other stuff. They find a way, right? But it's all about the marketing. It's all about the branding. I think T-Mobile's done a nice job to make the customer think, if I want to save money, I can go to T-Mobile. Yeah, so that's the strategies in terms of that. Yeah, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it.
But there's so much on this, man. There's so much to digest just in the open segment, Chacha.
So Moose, what do you think about the home broadband? 406,000. What do you think, man?
I think it's slowing, to B's point. I think it's slowing. And the reason why I say that so confidently is because I feel like it should have been closer to 600,000.
Yeah, I don't think that's possible anymore. I don't think there's going to be many quarters with that anymore.
B, what do you think about this? Talk to me.
Well, there's a reason for that, Sneed. I think the reason for it to not really be a thing anymore is because there are more players in the industry. AT&T is building out Internet Air. They're building out fiber. Verizon is building out their fixed wireless access product. They're also building out fiber. And then you also have Big Cable, which is, doing what they can in order to try to spend capex in order to be able to improve their networks as well. It's more competitive than it ever has been. And so because of that, you're going to see some slowdown, which is what I was saying before. T-Mobile's overall growth year over year is going down. It's not going up.
B, there's more to it too, actually, if you think about it. That's definitely a factor. But think about it like this. They're now geofencing and geolocking gateways to fixed addresses now.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten to that, but I was getting to it.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Just go ahead. Carry on.
No, you're right. But I mean, at the end of the day, these are things that they're doing in order to manage their network assets.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I understand and I respect that. But because of that, growth is going to slow.
Absolutely.
To that point, though, I mean, Verizon's has slowed year over year as well, I believe. So there has been increased levels of competition out there. AT&T, they're getting into the game to their credit as well with their fixed wireless access product and also their fiber product. So people aren't just, it's not like it was 2 years ago.
They're playing the field,
when T-Mobile was just kind of running over everybody and they didn't really have the competition. The competition is there. They do a really good job of stating what they delivered and then adding to it industry leading. They think everything that they do is industry leading. I will push back on some of those things. And I will also point out that the growth year over year is slowing down. So what they reported as far as their high speed internet net customer additions in 2024, first 6 months of the year, 811 in 2024. 2023 was 1,032. So of course you translate that into millions and of course hundreds of thousands. So it is starting to slow. And I think a lot of that has to do with increased levels of competition, pricing. They've been, they lowered pricing recently, but up until that point, they were charging a more expensive price than Verizon, and that's not something that's new either. Their highest tier price plan on their wireless service is more expensive than Verizon's. So I mean, I think as people continue to get educated on what's out there, as the other carriers, speak to what they offer versus the competition, I think you'll start to see things get a lot more competitive than what you're seeing right now. I think the game is going to start to mature as we continue down the year.
Moose, jump in.
Man, there's so much to digest here. Okay. First thing is a lot of markets are saturated. It's a physics calculation. Okay. It's a physics problem. It's a mathematical problem that you can determine exactly what's the peak amount of FWA users for any carrier at any given time. That's why when T-Mobile was saying, oh yeah, we can get like 9 to 12 million or some crazy number. I don't even know how many, right? But I don't believe it, because if they're getting into fiber, more than likely what they're going to do is they're going to have this converged box or a transitional period where they're going to give FWA to customers, and then they're going to migrate those customers over to fiber. That's number 1 point. Number 2 point is, if they don't get more spectrum on air, they can't add additional customers, period. Why do you think they did the geofencing? Right?
Actually, so to answer Jason D's question, and Moose kind of brings it up, resolving the fixed wireless issues involves them obviously now kind of managing the network more aggressively. The second part is going to be scaling higher capacity fiber circuits.
Yep.
I think additional cell site densification is in order. Organic growth, customers using more data per month, mobile and home internet.
Yep.
I think it's a lot of those things. I still think they have to get better gateways. I still think they have to invest in some higher capacity network solutions like millimeter wave and CPE that can actually, it's capable of these things. Let's call it a more complete CPE. They still have to explore that. And now that they're geofencing and you see them playing with promotional prices, adding $10, pulling back $10, and those types of things.
1.2 terabyte cap.
Max, you're low on the volume. We can't even hear you, sir. Let's get to the super chat here from Kevin. Verizon Wireless I use because I live in Connecticut in the sticks. My friends on T-Mobile always seem to have 5G UC, and I have 5G ultra-wideband on a very minimal basis. What do you think? I think just more tower sites got to get upgraded in that area. You gotta think to yourself, what's the population within the region? Kind of they start to prioritize, usage patterns and population and those things. So you're definitely going to get those upgrades. They will be modernizing the network. In fact, they're adding cell sites across the country. Just sometimes it takes a little bit of time depending on the region. The budget dollars have certain allocations and time frames. So hopefully that comes sooner rather than later, and you guys can get those benefits. Appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you.
How am I sounding now?
Very loud.
All right. Yeah. One more thing I wanted to add. They added that 1.2 terabyte cap to their home internet. So whereas
Sure.
before, they were letting anyone get it, they were giving you an uncapped line essentially. They were giving them out for $30 before if you had a premium voice line. Now they're realizing, oh, we don't need everyone on our network. I mean, they're pricing that away plan at what, $130 a month for the away plan for the unlimited option. That's crazy.
$180.
And also, something else
180.
Something
180
else
for the away. Yeah.
Something else that we got to bring up as well is that Spectrum has done a lot of retainment offers lately. So the save desk for Spectrum has been going crazy. And what is the retain desk? That's when a customer is basically saying, I'm going to cancel you guys. So it's the last ditch effort to save the customer. So what I have been told especially in Southern California, because both Verizon and T-Mobile and AT&T are aggressively targeting Southern California. What Spectrum has done is basically say, if anybody calls in, and by the way, this is confirmed because I have a buddy of mine's mom that called in and was basically saying, I'm not paying $95 for the 300 plan. She's like, that is insane amounts of money for the 300 plan. And the only ISP option, like wirelined, right, internet is Spectrum, right? There's no alternative option. So basically, the way that Spectrum has done it is they're micro segmentation. And what I mean by that is they're looking at the entire market and they're going by neighborhood level. You know what I mean? By the particular neighborhood level. Oh, these people, they have two providers. We got to be more competitive against the second provider. Oh, this neighborhood, we're the only people in town. So price them the maximum we can price them for that market. For example, the 1 gig plan is $140 now. $140 for the 1 gig down and only 25 up.
That's absurd.
It's insane amounts of money. So what she did, right? She called in. She was like, "I'm leaving you guys. I'm going to a different provider." Right? She didn't at the time know which one, whether it was AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, and she ended up getting the exact same Spectrum One bundle that everybody else is getting, and she got a free Spectrum Mobile line, which she's using right now just to test. Right? But she did say that compared to Verizon, it's not as good, even though it's Verizon. It's just the different priority levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that should say a lot right there. Is that Spectrum for the first time feels threatened to the point where they are actually renewing the existing promotions that a new customer would get.
Haven't seen that before.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right, here's some service revenues and such. All right, service revenues $16.4 billion, 4% improvement year over year. Says best in industry growth. They said that a few times at the earnings conference. Postpaid service revenues $12.9 billion, 7% improvement year over year. Best in industry growth. Net income of $2.9 billion grew 32% year over year. Best in industry growth. Diluted EPS $2.49 grew 34% year over year. Best in industry. Core adjusted EBITDA $8 billion grew 9% year over year. Best in industry growth. Net cash provided by operating activities $5.5 billion, record high, and grew 27% year over year. Adjusted free cash flow at $4.4 billion, record high, and grew 54% year over year. AT&T came in at $4.9 billion, and then Verizon at almost $6 billion, I believe.
Correct.
Okay, and then I think where a lot of their cash went, returned $3 billion to stockholders, including repurchases of $2.3 billion of common stock and a quarterly dividend payment of $759 million. So financially, they are rewarding the investor.
So basically, what I see them saying is we used to lose money and now we're making money. So it's best in industry growth when you used to not be profitable, like to the tune of losses in the billions. And now you're making money. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that. That does show significant levels of progress. But comparing to AT&T and Verizon, come on, these two companies have been profitable for a long time. So you're not going to get best in industry growth from companies that have been making money, But that's not necessarily to negate what they've done. It's just I don't know what service revenues. I guess that's total. I guess that's top line revenue. So if that's okay, 16.4 billion. Verizon did 32.8 billion. AT&T did just under 30 billion. So I mean, come on, they got way more customers than AT&T does, respectfully. But 29 billion versus 16.
We're gonna get to the
all in
ARPU
free
and the
lines
ARPA stuff, right? But we're gonna get to the ARPU and the ARPA because that's important with those calculations. It's pretty crazy, man. Like they're they really are taking this whole like rewarding the shareholder very seriously. The they said they want to give back 60 billion to investors over the course of I don't know what the time duration is, but $60 billion. So yeah, there's quite a bit.
So if their free cash flow is 4.4,
yeah,
and they return 3 billion, that only leaves 1.4 left over. How are they going to increase capex? Like, so I understand,
well, they didn't
one of the
actually.
things.
They reduced it.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that they talked about is that they are being more efficient with their spend than their competitors are. I mean, I would love to know more information about that, because I would just would like to know how they're calculating that. I mean, that's a great way to spin it. If you're not really spending as much as your competition, the only other thing you can say is, well, we're being more efficient with the spend. But is that because you have to, or because it's what you want to do? Because right now, a significant portion of your free cash flow is going to your shareholders, and
Yeah,
it,
they made promises. This dates back to the merger. They said they were going to reward the shareholder, and I think they're following through on that.
Yeah, I mean, they have no choice. You can't play around with dividends once you declare them. So, and to be fair, it's similar situations with Verizon and also AT&T. Significant portions of their free cash flow go back to their shareholders as well. So it's not exclusive to T-Mobile. I want to be fair with that. But when you got, I think Verizon reported 12.3 billion, and they reported 8. Free cash flow for the quarter was, I think, 6 billion, just almost 6 billion for Verizon. It's 4.4 here. There's a lot more to be left over once Verizon pays their bills, once AT&T pays their bills,
You know
versus
what I was
that
thinking,
of a
B?
T-Mobile. What's up, man?
Saying? You know what I was thinking when you were just talking about right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I think, and this is just a prediction, speculation, but I think T-Mobile is going to slowly reduce capex to the point of just maintenance at this point. Like, let's be realistic here, okay? Let's put some
do that.
facts. Let's just put some facts on the table. Hold on, Chad. Let's put some facts on the table. They have Starlink on deck for the rural, right? For the rural areas, right? Okay, that's number 1 point. Number 2 point, they have committed, to your point, giving back significant amounts of money to the investors. Significant amounts of money to the investors, okay? Third point, their N41 rollout is pretty much done, okay? I don't think they're going to get 100% of their cell sites with N41. I think they're going to get as close to it as possible. But what's more important about this is that because they've said we're going to do a dividend, we're going to do stock buybacks, whatever they say, right? We're going to do something, right? Because that's how you give back money to the investors, by the way, right? There's a dividend option and then there's stock buyback. So if you do a combination of the two starting next year, what do you think is going to happen to the capex? Right now it's at 9 billion, correct?
It's at the initial guidance was for 9.4. No,
I think
9.7.
I think they're going to go down, Chacha, to at least 5 billion over the next 3 years.
Well, that makes sense. They want to preserve their network. All right. Well, I don't know about.
Hold on a second. 5 billion.
Yep, I think they're going to go down to 5 billion.
So I'm not going to go extreme like that. Because Moose also said that T-Mobile wants to buy Spectrum.
Yes,
like Charter Spectrum. No, we're not going there. But listen,
that is a very credible
stop,
opportunity.
Moose.
Not if they're decreasing capex, Moose. How are they going to afford that?
Pause. Exactly. I'm agreeing with B. Moose, look what you made me do.
Capex for the network spend, guys. Capex for the network spend is not the same as if you are buying another company. Come on now.
So listen.
If you're gonna
another company.
Yeah, but what he's saying is, what are you signaling? You know what I'm saying? If you're
yeah, man.
If you're gonna forego your network in order to buy someone else, I would encourage that, because I mean, how are you going to keep their network usage isn't going down, it's going up, just like everybody else's is. Why would you like almost eliminate capex and take it down to just maintaining what you have. I mean, they haven't
Yeah.
even deployed all the spectrum that they have now. They still got capex work to do.
I don't
Musa,
think they're
Yeah.
ever
you
gonna go
sure?
past
Well,
9.
they're trying to preserve their network, as we're seeing with the home internet, and we're definitely going to start seeing it with wireless. But back to this T-Mobile acquiring Charter Spectrum. That's like a Sprint Nextel type of
All right,
acquisition.
all right,
That's
hold on
just
a
not
second.
good.
Hold on. We're gonna start getting this thing off the rails here, real quick. Prasanna, thank you for the super chat. Was a T-Mobile user in 2018 while in Michigan. It was so bad. Back to T-Mobile in last December. Network is day and night. Yeah, so yeah, it's come a long way. They're as competitive as they've ever been. The network's as big as it's ever been. Lots of capacity, and a lot of people have been enjoying the service, man. So thank you. Appreciate the super chat and glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, so all right. Well, I guess it's worth, since we could transition over to the network. Listen to this, guys. Swept. Cold sweep. Every category for overall network performance in the latest third-party reports. Most consistent overall network. Highest ranking consumer sentiment from Ookla, and ranking first for overall network experience metrics from OpenSignal. Root metrics not mentioned in this. 87% of 5G traffic carried on sites with 3 spectrum layers, delivering an incredibly consistent network experience. What do you guys think of that, man? That's that whole like 5G standalone capability there. You got the N71, the N25, the N41,
Yeah,
and
the
you got
layer cake.
yeah, exactly.
Layer cake. Oh my gosh. Nah, cooking the books. They're cooking the books.
Nah, man, that's legit. They got
No, no, no.
they
I'm not on the 87% thing. I mean the other thing. They win all these rewards. Nah.
well, I mean, it's all about how the network is tested, right? So this is crowdsourced data, and with respect to Ookla, I think Ookla is just speed testing,
Exactly.
and I
How are
think
you
that.
go?
Go ahead, B.
This is a horrible way to do comparisons to your network of base versus that of your competitors. It's horrible. You're essentially just relying on people to go to an app and do a speed test on their phone. I mean, that's just not a great way to compare networks. It's just not. Of course, they neglected to mention root metrics. They're not going to, because they never ever win root metrics ever, ever. They never win root metrics. It's not even close. It's a two-man race for root metrics leadership and dominance. It's always
It would
between
be a
Verizon and
three-man
AT&T.
race.
If
Wait, are you counting out Charlie?
I am,
Exactly, bro. It,
I
it
am.
would be a three-man race if
It,
only.
it's not. So he won't pay. So that is what that is. But
No, he's got to cut Coach Prime those checks.
Bro.
Uh,
B, what do you think of the 87% on the 3 spectrum layers, man? T-Mobile really taking advantage of the technology, getting all those bands moved over to 5G. They got N71 for the low band, N25 for the low mid band, and then N41 for the high mid band.
so be it. Those are the spectrum resources that they've acquired. So it's great that they've been able to deploy them. I would point out that they've had a major time advantage. They've been essentially able to compete for 2.5, almost 3 years without any competition at all from a mid-band perspective. And then when Verizon got access to their C-band, when they bought it, they had to wait like a whole another year in order for the FCC and the FAA and everybody to determine that what the FAA was selling was a bunch of ridiculousness before they could even deploy. So they've had a lot of help. And I'm going to continue to say that until the cows come home, just because it's the truth. I really don't believe that as things have begun to normalize, as Verizon and then also AT&T continue to deploy their spectrum assets, I think we're seeing the tides turn. Now I don't know how Ookla and this crowdsourced data, how it determines, for example, 5G availability. I don't know what that's all about. But I will say, I just don't believe that you can cover 200 million plus pops and still have 5G availability below 10%. that makes zero scientific sense. And I don't understand why someone as supposedly respected as a Craig Moffat, for example, would tout that without questioning that himself. He's been an analyst in the industry for several decades. He's seen these reports over several decades. Why isn't he questioning that? Because I'm just a guy on a podcast and I'm questioning it. You got 200 million plus pops and some respectable quote unquote, competitive benchmark analysis test is saying 7% is what Verizon. How does that even make mathematical sense?
The other thing I wanted to follow up on exactly what B's saying, just slightly one thing that was missing. If Verizon purchased 10 by 10, so 20 megahertz of 600 megahertz, T-Mobile would not be in the position that they're in now. And let me explain. The only thing that Verizon is missing as of right now to be completely dominant in a 5G performance category is a low band 5G spectrum carrier, correct? Because band 5 is only in parts of the United States. The other parts, AT&T has them. And right now, what we've noticed is that Verizon has a lot of 5G ultra-wideband speed islands. What is a speed island? It's when you are connected to C-band, it's amazing, beautiful, amazing experience. As soon as you disconnect off of C-band, you're back on LTE. So I have a very strong prediction that if Dish is going to go bankrupt next year, maybe even this year, Verizon is going to try to buy that 600 megahertz because they desperately need a low band 5G NR spectrum band. Now, that's part one of what I was to say, right? About what I needed to say. Part two is even more important to what JB just said. T-Mobile has supposedly covered over 300 million pops of 5G, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If they have over 300 million pops of 5G covered, not N41, but we're talking any 5G band. So in this case, it's N71. Okay. Mm-hmm. Why is their experience so bad in the rural, in certain areas of the rural?
Right? That's what they're trying to address with the U.S. Cellular merger.
That's only in literally the Midwest. We're talking in other parts of.
Well, no, U.S. Cellular is also in like Maine and the Northwest and that type of areas.
Yeah, but it's small geographical range.
Exactly. That's not everywhere. However, what they have done is bought more 600 megahertz spectrum. Right, Columbia Capital and all these other people that had bought the spectrum.
Holdings companies.
Right. Comcast they're leasing the spectrum from Comcast, right? And then they're apparently going to buy it outright from them soon. So this is what I'm saying, okay? T-Mobile is not perfect, and it probably never will be. But they have created this propaganda that they are the best, and they're not.
That's Eugene.
I completely agree with B. This is a lot of propaganda.
But you guys got to take it like this. Their whole premise, the whole concept of the T-Mobile network is by shifting the narrative to a conversation about 5G. They have the largest 5G network. They have the most bandwidth on their 5G network. They are the only national network with a standalone operation in which you have several component carriers in NR operations. So that's N71 for low band and 3 mid-band channels, legitimate national mid-band channels of mid-band. And then they still haven't deployed N77, which, that's one in the clip right there for them that they can add that channel. And they've been actively refarming LT spectrum for the last couple of years. So that the channels will widen, the channels will be moved, they'll be migrated, and that narrative isn't going to change. Their 5G narrative, which to them is networking quality, that's how they market it. 5G availability and 5G capacity equals quality networking in the Verizon methodology, or excuse me, the T-Mobile methodology. So, I mean, if you think about it, guys, is AT&T or Verizon going to come out and say, "Oh no, 5G isn't good, LTE is good"? They're not going to come out and say that. Nobody wants to go backwards in technology and say, "Well, we're doing LTE the best still." They're not going to do that. So T-Mobile's right to approach it this way for the sake of, their interest. I mean, what flexibility do we have in LTE right now? I mean, who's putting spectrum to LTE right now? Who's putting technology into LTE right now?
Well, we do know that Verizon did have to shift some assets from band 5 back to LTE because LTE was super congested. We do know that. And by the way, don't think that AT&T is immune to that either. AT&T also did that as well. There was people on literally Cell Mapper subreddit that were saying, 1 week I had 10 by 10 NR band 5 and now I'm only at 5 by 5. And then if they go to LTE, it seems like it's 10 by 10 now on the LTE. So both carriers had to pivot some spectrum assets, and DSS did not work. DSS did not work. So again, it goes back to, and there's a lot of folks that are saying the same things. The situation is both AT&T and Verizon need a dedicated low band carrier, and they currently do not have that. And by the way, I'm going to go on record on this. This is a prediction. I wish I had like a list of these predictions laid out, Judge, honestly. Band 13 and band 12 will literally be the last spectrum bands to migrate to 5G NR. The prediction is every other spectrum band will be 5G NR before band 12 and band 13. It might take until 2040, I've been told, to fully migrate all the spectrum bands to NR.
Moose, when do you think FirstNet band 14 is going to be moved to 5G?
All I can say is
I'd
before
estimate.
2030.
I was
Before
gonna
2030.
say. I was gonna say, at the they're gonna leave it LTE for a while, but it would make sense for them to do it in a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, T-Mobile's acquisition of Plum and Mint got them 3.5 million prepaid customers.
Yep. I do remember hearing that. I watched part of the earnings call this morning. Yeah, they were a really successful prepaid carrier.
Actually, with respect to prepaid, they added, I think, 180,000 customers.
So, how many do we think that would be under, the Mint Ultra umbrella versus Metro? Because this is very interesting. For the first time ever from them, we're seeing them kind of go backwards in, with respect to competition and prepaid. Right, Sneed, we did that live stream. We saw how the Metro Flex plans are like really far behind in price and value compared to the others, especially the family plans, where you're not getting much of a multi-line discount. And we saw what their old plans looked like because they were by law required to keep those around. And when we checked out how Metro stacks up against Total Wireless, Cricket, Boost, even, it didn't look pretty because they're marketing this whole Metro Flex thing, right? Pulling out the Eugene propaganda card again. And, I think most of their prepaid ads continue to come from Mint. It seems to be a continually strong brand. They stay consistent. They've been doing a lot more plan discounts than usual in the past few years. It's usually been pretty rock solid at 15. Then they started doing, get any plan for 15. Then they did, get a discount off the actual plan itself. They were doing it. They're expanding out to all kinds of different retailers. They're more significant now in Target and Best Buy. They're making more of a name for themselves, and they're still staying true to what they promised to do.
And by the way, I just saw this. I'm looking at the Excel financials. Postpaid device upgrade rate for second quarter 2024 is 2.3%. So again, it goes back to people are not upgrading on any carrier right now.
Yeah, it's an industry-wide thing.
This is the worst quarter actually ever in the last since it's been recorded. And this
So hold on. I have a genuine question. How was the upgrade rate in Q2 of 2020?
I don't know. It doesn't say here.
Okay. I would want to know that, though, because
It's been slowing for a couple of years, to be honest
Okay.
with you. But I think what's happening now is it's just gotten more notable and
Yeah.
equipment, like, because it shows in equipment sales and equipment costs, and
Yeah.
yeah,
But
Because what I was getting onto was, we're expecting the iPhone 16 launch to be, pretty big because we're getting Apple Intelligence across the entire lineup. We're getting,
it's not going to be ready for launch.
no, it's going to be
man. Oh, they
parts of
delayed it, right? They
I'm
delayed it.
testing it right now, and very little of it is actually going to be available. But
Yeah.
it is going to launch in October, the 18.1.
Really?
Yeah,
October
but here's the
8th.
other thing too that you have to remember that I was told today, which was really interesting insight. Why do you think iPhone 11, iPhone 12, these the series, right? iPhone 11 series, iPhone 12 series, iPhone 13 series is so popular right now in the resale markets?
People don't really see the need to get the 14s and the 15s.
No. What else? It's
Low
something
price.
something that you won't even think of.
The free promotions, the free phone promotions.
The prepaid deals. No, I mean, no, because he was talking about resale market.
The
Yeah.
resale market. Why is it so hot right now in the resale market, these devices?
Honestly, I don't got anything for that. What is it, Moose?
The SIM card. The SIM card is still available in the 11, 12.
That's
Okay.
right.
Only in the
Is that
Hong
really a
Kong.
huge deal for
It's a
consumers?
big deal internationally, yeah.
Well, internationally, yes, but what about in the U.S.?
In the
Because
US,
internationally, the 14 and 15 still got the SIM card slot.
internationally, yes. But what I'm saying is that think about how many devices the United States has in 11s, 12s, and 13s. We're talking about tens of millions, right?
Yeah.
So when they are doing a trade-in this year, there's an anticipation that the carriers are going to be doing a lot of device promotions with 11s, 12s, and 13s because the super cycle is upon us. I am genuinely convinced, and I'll tell you why. Look at the promotions that they're doing for the Z Flip and Fold. Look at the promotions that they're going to be doing for the Pixel lineup. Listen to me. The Pixel used to launch in October. They have now increased their timeline or shortened their life cycle, I should say, to now August. They're launching in August.
August 13th, I believe.
They're launching in August, 2 months ahead of schedule for the first time ever. Why? Because the iPhone month is September, and everything after September, it's a lost cause. That's what the OEMs have said by doing things much earlier than ever before. For example, the Samsung Galaxy S series used to launch in March. Remember that?
Yeah, then
Then they used to launch.
February and
Now they used to launch in February. Now they're like hinting at it in January. So everything is much earlier, right? And then the other thing that I'm looking at here, which I'm trying to find, I'm trying to find in their Excel, is how many employees do they have? Because I feel like they have gone down in overall employees.
Let me get to the super chat real quick, guys. This one from Green. Salute Green. Thank you for the donation. How much millimeter wave spectrum does Dish have? Do you think they'll survive long enough to deployment? What bands do they have for the spectrum? So I'm gonna go. I don't think they own it nationally, and I think where they do have it, I think it's like 200 or 400 megahertz bandwidth. The locations where they have it are kind of like, I don't know, what appears to be kind of like strategic within key markets, but Yeah, it's definitely not national. It's nothing like their 600 or 700 holdings. It's nothing like their AWS or anything like that. So, yeah, and I don't think they'll deploy it. They don't even have the network traffic to deploy it. They've got 50 megahertz of sub 3, and they've got 7 or 8 million customers using it, so it shouldn't be an issue. To give you perspective, that same amount of bandwidth, not even all of it, but let's say it was the same amount of bandwidth that T-Mobile had back when they had 75 million subscribers. So, yeah, they're not hurting for bandwidth. They're not hurting for capacity. They're not gonna build it. No way.
The reason I was asking about Q2 2020 specifically is because that was right before the iPhone 12 series, which was huge. Apple sold 100 million of those in the first 6 months. Huge launch, right? 5G, we got OLED across the entire lineup. We got a mini model, which, didn't sell well, but some people were excited about. The 12 was a huge launch. And again, we're expecting the 16 to be, pretty big as well. So what I was getting at is maybe the worst quarters are right before the quarters that we get the bigger changes and the bigger launches.
But this is not really like, when you think about it, you can get Apple Intelligence now if you just get a 15 Pro or Pro Max.
Yeah, no, I got it right now. I'm using the beta.
Right. But what I'm saying is that, like, the physical phone is not going to be any different. This launch is literally designed for only one thing: creating a cheaper model that is able to support AI, Apple Intelligence. That's the only reason why people are going to buy this, is because they're going to see that price point and they're going to go and buy that.
Yeah, but the question, Moose, becomes: is it going to facilitate a resurgence in growth for carriers? Are we going to see, a better turnout in the results for Q3 and Q4 of this year than we saw Q3 and Q4 last year? Mm-hmm. And the trend for the last 2 years has been slowing sales. The iPhone sales in China have come to a screeching halt. iPhone sales in North America have slowed. Not a screeching halt, obviously, but I mean, come on, dude. You remember what it was like in 2019, 2020 iPhone sales? I mean, Moose, there was a time where people couldn't even get the iPhone they wanted back in 2020.
That's still the same case now until sometime in late November, early December. Every single year is the same thing. It's supply chain.
No, Moose. People were settling for devices in February and March in 2021.
Right.
They were settling. They're like, "Oh, I can't get a Pro." Like, come on, man.
And I'll add one thing. Yes, the 16 models specifically may not be huge, but think about all those people that were pining for those iPhone 11s, 12s. Maybe not as much the 13s, but people who have held onto those phones, they might be ready to upgrade. So as you said, Moose, they're going to start doing the trade-in promos for those devices, because they're getting old and people are still holding on to them, and they sold like hotcakes. So I'm thinking there will be some, not super big, but a significant enough amount of demand within the carriers for the next iPhones.
T-Mobile spoke to it today, Moose, about the iPhone upgrades.
What they said?
They said no big deal. They said if phone sales are slowing, we don't care. We've got the best deal in wireless. We don't care. If the iPhone sales are huge, they're glad. They'll take their share.
Now that's Eugene BSing. No, they're definitely got alarms going on inside right now. That's not. I don't buy that for 1 second. No, everyone's feeling it. They literally launched plans where the whole selling point is you get to upgrade sooner.
Why should they care, Max? They don't make any money when they sell phones. They lose money. Every time they sell a phone, they lose money.
Well, they're selling the customer a plan that you can upgrade every 2 years or every year, and they're not delivering on that.
I don't think many people take that plan, to be honest with you.
I don't either. And I know people who work at T-Mobile. It's not a very popular plan.
They see the commercials. They want to come in and get the essentials, dog.
None of the carriers make money when they sell phones. Wall Street reacts when they see equipment revenue down, but the carriers don't care. Why would a carrier be like, oh, yes, let me subsidize a phone, $1,000 phone for 24 months or 36 months. Yes, let me just give away money. They would rather just sell you the service.
Well, that's why you see, I think, carriers offering some incredible BYOD stuff. $500 in port-in credit. I mean, think
Honestly,
about it, dude.
yeah,
If I get 500 on a
yeah.
port-in credit, Max, that's a free bill on that one line for like almost a year.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Metro's got that one line for $25 plan, unlimited if you BYOD. So yeah, there's definitely that aspect to it. So I can definitely agree on that part.
Oh, and now with like the whole unlock policy change, oh, dude, you could guarantee that promotions are going to be a little bit different. I mean, come on, Moose, you got to foresee something changing.
Yeah, you know what? They are definitely moving in the direction of BYOD. I think that's going to be a bigger part of many carriers' businesses.
I'll put money on T-Mobile being the first one to start cutting phone promotions once they're forced to unlock people's phones.
Yeah.
Well, actually, speaking about that, I don't think the FCC's mandate is actually going to work, and I'll tell you why. Do you guys remember the Chevron decision?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Supreme Court case,
Yeah.
right, in the 80s, I believe the 80s, that basically said that the government has the right through the departments, like the FCC, EPA, et cetera, to regulate certain aspects of businesses, correct? That's just the super simplified term in layman's terms, because I don't think it's actually correct the way I said it. But to put it into context for this, net neutrality cannot be enforced by the FCC per the rejection of Chevron, number one. Number two, and by the way, The Verge actually did a report on this. I'm not just speaking out of my ass. The Verge straight up reported that because of the Chevron decision, it changes everything, including net neutrality and the device unlock. Because what that means is that the carriers don't have to listen to that recommendation. That's why it's a recommendation, not a demand. This is a big deal, guys.
Well, I mean, all we're waiting on is a signature from current President Joe Biden. I mean, what's the holdup?
Well, they probably killed him. I don't know.
It's not going to go into a signature, Trisha. What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
The FCC 3-2 voted to what's it called? Explore the 60-day option, but it's only a recommendation. It's not going to be a demand because they have no power to enforce it anymore.
Well, so hold on. Let's break this down. Verizon has had to do 60 days for the longest time, and they haven't cut promotions.
Let me read you guys the Verge article really quickly, verbatim, what the Verge article says. Because I don't think you guys understand how big of a deal this is. Okay,
What up,
it states, how the Supreme Court
Not much.
Chevron
Sorry for
ruling.
being late, man.
It's all good.
By the way, Chacha, can you search up this article and put it up on the screen? I'll read it to you, but it's called "How the Supreme Court's Chevron Ruling Could Doom Net Neutrality." This is a massive thing.
Why are we talking about net neutrality right now, dog?
Because we brought up the fact of the 60-day unlock.
That's a separate issue.
It's the same thing because
It's not.
it is affecting the FCC's ability to govern and police the carriers.
Bruh, that's
It's
two
the
separate
same
issues.
thing.
It's
the
not,
same
Moose.
thing. Look, let me read you the thing. Just
Every
put it up on the
issue-
screen, and I'll read you what it is.
Every issue and every policy is a standalone, and it's a standalone thing. It's not the same.
Let me
Well,
read you the
And
article.
Verizon complied with the 60-day thing, and they're not cutting back on promos.
Let me read you the article, please. Let me just read you the article because this is something that has been swept under the rug. It's not been reported on any channel yet.
Verizon's not the most expensive, Daniel. That's actually T-Mobile. It's an incorrect statement that you made, man. They have the most expensive package of anybody, of any of the carriers. It's T-Mobile. So that, I guess, your stance is out of date. It's outdated information. You gotta do a little bit more research on what's actually being offered. Go ahead, Moose.
Yeah. Chacha, did you put it up yet? Did you find it?
You said it's a Verge article
Yeah. How the
on
Supreme
net
Court.
neutrality.
This is the title. Just search up this title. How the Supreme Court Chevron ruling could doom net neutrality 6 days ago.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, put it up. I'm going to read it to you guys because this is a big deal that nobody has even cared to report or even knows about. Okay.
Moose, because nobody cares about net neutrality. It's
No,
like
but it's not just
it's
net
it's like
neutrality.
somebody listen, it's like somebody standing out in the middle of the woods and they're screaming, and like
It's,
the nearest people are 10 miles away.
it's
Nobody
not
cares.
just net neutrality. Let me read the article. Okay. On the right-hand side, it says, the court struck down Chevron deference last month. That's a big deal for the future of net neutrality. Okay. On today's episode of Decoder, we're talking about the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Chevron deference and what it means for the future of the internet. I've been covering the fight over net neutrality for almost my entire career as a tech reporter. This guy is the editor-in-chief of The Verge, Nilay Patel. Okay. Over 15 years now. The idea is that the internet service providers shouldn't be able to discriminate between what services you access on the internet. AT&T shouldn't be allowed to slow down X and speed up Threads, and Verizon shouldn't be able to block Zoom because it owns Blue Jeans. It's pretty basic stuff. After all this time, the Biden administration's FCC once again made it the law. But big telecom companies truly hate the idea that anyone would regulate their networks, and they once again filed a lawsuit over it. Until very recently, everyone sort of understood the arguments in a case that like and how they would go. Like I said, I've been covering this for 15 years. It felt familiar. But then everything changed in late June. The Supreme Court issued a bombshell opinion in a case called Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, which overturned something called Chevron deference. The idea that courts should generally defer to agencies like the FCC when it comes to interpreting ambiguous parts of the law. Boom. Right there. Let me reread what that means.
Moose, do not reread it again, bro.
It's
No.
a big deal.
No.
Chacha, I'm telling you this right now. This is a big deal. Because what it means is if you sue and the court
The court's going to say go back to the FCC with your problems.
No, it's not. Look, read it again.
It says the idea that courts should generally defer to agencies like the FCC. They're going to defer. They're going to say it's on you. You make the decision.
They're saying that the court is not going to say, "Hey, FCC, you should defer to this. You should figure this out on your own." Keep reading.
The FCC wants the phones unlocked.
Keep reading. Because guess what? What if T-Mobile and Verizon and AT&T sue the U.S.?
Oh, so you're saying it's the other way around. Now the courts want to intervene.
Nah, see, Chacha, that's why I'm saying you're not understanding what's going on here.
Then how am I? It's either one or the other, and I said the other one first, and you said I'm wrong.
I'm going to keep reading because this is a big deal that if you don't understand it from one sentence, this is a big deal for the community. Okay. That means that net neutrality lawsuit is suddenly very different. It's now about whether the court thinks the internet should be neutral, not the FCC. What does that mean? The FCC has no power. It's now all on the court. And if the court says net neutrality is illegal, net neutrality is illegal based on the court, not the FCC. That's why it's a big deal.
Oh, so then you're saying that the FCC would be powerless.
Exactly, my point.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, all right.
That's why I said anything now, anything. 60-day unlock, net neutrality,
locking your phone
Yeah,
permanently.
you might as well just throw away the Spectrum pipeline. It's over.
This is a big deal, guys.
So you
This
might
is
as
a
well.
big
This is what
deal.
Moose. This has the precedence goes back to the FAA situation with C-band.
Exactly.
Remember when the FAA was like, the Department of Transportation and all that whole situation.
Right.
That was the FCC's call, and
Now,
they just sat on the sideline and did nothing.
This is what I'm saying, guys. That one sentence after this means that net neutrality lawsuit is suddenly very different. And it explains it right there. It's now about whether the court thinks the internet should be neutral, not the FCC. And you wouldn't know it. The Sixth Circuit immediately halted the FCC's new net neutrality order and asked for briefs on how the Looper Bright ruling would change the case. Guys, this is a big deal. FCC is powerless because if the court, even if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, says the FCC has no right to tell the carriers about net neutrality, it should be completely neutral. As in, like, you don't have an opinion, FCC. You can't police it. Then that's what the law is. That's why it's a big deal. Anything moving forward is now going to be a big deal.
Then the
So it's on the
FCC should just be dismantled. They should just disband the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, so if it's on the courts now, like, what are the courts going to say? They're going to be in full support of, letting the carriers lock the phones whenever they want?
I think that it's going to go back to if you can sue and prove that by you, the carrier, for either Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, if you do not lock your phones, it will hypothetically, all the different reasons, fraud related or, whatever, right? Whatever reasons they'll say, right? They're going to come up with really good reasons. Trust
You
me.
think they'll pull that off, though?
Yes. Trust me. The
They did
court,
before. There's
yeah,
precedence for it. They've done
yes.
this.
I guess so. Yeah.
One thing I want to say quickly, though, here, guys. So obviously, we know the stance that the telco sector is going to take, but I think we're forgetting that when it comes to things like net neutrality and unlock policies, other companies also have interests that they would fight to counter sue. I mean, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, and other companies would be very much in favor of things like net neutrality because they were already in favor of things like net neutrality before. So it'd be a company versus company battle. And it really just comes down to a toss up between basically administrations, with it not really being too different than how the FCC was going, right? Like when we had Ajit Pai and he repealed net neutrality. When we got whoever that female is, I can't think of her name, Sneed, I'm sorry. We got net neutrality coming back under the Biden administration.
You're talking about Jessica Rosenworcel?
Yeah, yes, Jessica. Thank
The
you.
chairwoman. Come on, bro.
I'm sorry, I forgot her name, dude.
It's a tough one.
I was thinking of Wheeler under Obama, but
that was back in the day. Yeah,
I know. But
well, that was a very big time for those issues. Remember?
But one thing I'll say here is that the fact that it's actually moving out of the FCC and into more of a legal sphere means that whatever decision does get made will be a little bit more permanent. It'll be a little bit more permanent and a little bit more enforceable. Because prior to it making it this way, it was really just a toss up of whoever the head of the FCC was. It was very easy to be overruled or changed.
But we're talking about an FCC that didn't have a fifth commissioner for 2.5 years. Like the FCC has been, I mean, I'd have to say this has to have been the worst FCC ever, because they were not complete. They were making no progress. They got nothing done during the whole pandemic portion of the era. I mean, it's been, and they've made issues out of non-issues, and then the things that are really important, they've just glanced over. It's been terrible. And I was the person who in the first 2 years said, let's wait it out. Let's see what they do in this full 4-year term. They've been awful. And I'm not even joking. Like,
Current administration or the last one?
No, this one. The last one, at least we could say that infrastructure was enabled, right? We could say that, like, carriers got the right of way to build their towers, to upgrade their towers. Like, those things that were preventing progress, right? Like the permitting process was kind of streamlined. Now like carriers have to get an answer and a reply, from cities and municipalities to build. So like those things at least happened with the GPI.
Right. A GPI was more like the company pleaser, definitely not the people pleaser, but definitely the
What?
you
What are you talking about?
you
What are
made
you
the
talking about?
you got rid of net neutrality.
If not for streamlining the permitting process, we're not talking about pops covered today. Can we just stop, please, with that? That's a ridiculous narrative. It really is. A people pleaser? Like, so we're not talking about 5G and availability and throughput speeds. We're not talking about that anymore.
No. I said company. I said that's what he wasn't.
Okay, so company pleaser. Do the people who use the phones, did they not benefit from a faster rollout of 5G technology? Like, did we not benefit from that? So people pleaser versus company pleaser, because of what was done under Pi, we got where we are today, and we got here really, really fast. Is that a bad thing?
Not
Are you
at all.
saying that's a bad? Okay, so then why would you say that about him? That doesn't make sense.
It's a net neutrality.
What about, okay, so what about the internet isn't openly accessible, isn't open today? Before net neutrality was quote unquote repealed, what's different back then versus today? Is there a website you can't access today?
Well,
Is there any access to the internet that you don't have today, Max? You get on the internet all the time and you talk to us on the internet. That's how we talk on the podcast. So what aspect of connectivity do you not have access to that makes you think the internet isn't already open? Who is closing the internet? Is AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Spectrum? Who's closing the internet? Exactly.
No.
Nobody. So then what are we talking about? What are we debating? What are we talking about? We're trying to regulate something that's not happening. What are we talking about right now, guys? I've been very quiet.
There may have been a point where I think the regulation was a necessity, but I think that time has come and gone. I mean, there was an issue when they were zero rating certain apps that had to be addressed pretty quick. But I mean, outside of that, everything's cool.
When you say they, who you referring to? Which ISP? Is that was that?
AT&T was zero rating HBO Max. T-Mobile had their whole binge on program and how they were going about zero rating data on that. Comcast, Verizon, like there was.
You mean
there was?
you mean the binge on that consumers loved and supported and flocked to in droves? That doesn't seem like something that the American people didn't want. We're not.
Hold on, B. It's not a matter of whether or not consumers liked it or not. The problem was that zero rating provided an unfair advantage to certain companies over others. Like if we take it to the end game, right? If ISPs are able to say like, yeah, these sites, if ISPs are able to dictate what sites are free or don't have a cost to visit, and they happen to be the ones that they own, especially back then when media was well and truly more concentrated, it provided a very much unfair advantage to certain companies over others, which would definitely not be healthy for the overall market.
Yo, can we get to the super chat real quick? Hey, this one is from Green. Super chat number 2. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. When will you think of the iPhone going eSIM only worldwide? How long do you think it'll be before other phone makers follow suit? Okay, so eSIM only worldwide. I mean, they want to go eSIM only right now. If they could, they would. They'd snap their fingers. Everybody would be completely eSIM. Every country, every carrier. So that's I don't know how realistic it is to expect it within the next launch, but
it's not going to happen. Sneed.
Right.
It's not going to happen for the next 20 years.
Let's see this last part here. Before other phone makers follow suit. I mean, any manufacturer that operates in markets where they can get away with it, they probably will try. I think Samsung will try, and I think the Pixel will try, because they're, like North American versions or variants of the phones, they can do it because all carriers support eSIM very well here.
And by the way,
So,
the S24 and the Z Flip Fold, right, both of them, they now have eSIM capabilities very similar to how the Pixel is now able to be provisioned over the air as well. So we're now slowly, even on the Android side,
without a
going
QR
to
code, Moose?
without a QR code, correct? Without a QR code. So you can push the eSIM profile to to a Pixel, no problem, and even to a Samsung, no problem now. So what I'm saying is that the uh, Android OEMs have taken 2 years to really polish that eSIM enhancement and feature, but I don't think that Samsung is going to get rid of the SIM card unless it becomes more financially beneficial to them, in at least in the United States. Because yes, that is one of the differentiating factors as to why you would get a Samsung device versus an iPhone, for example. But I have a feeling that all OEMs will eventually be like, you know what? It cost me 25, or let's say hypothetically, it cost me 15 bucks, 10 bucks per device times millions that I make. But if I was to remove it and go all eSIM, I'd be saving that margin, right? So it all comes down to margin, guys, right? Because if you think about it, why do you think it goes back to the thing that I was saying? Why did the iPad Pro remove millimeter wave? Because of margins and because they wanted to be the thinnest freaking product in the world, right? But the day that an iPhone removes millimeter wave is strictly because of margin. They are going to go crazy on margin.
It's not going to happen. No, no, that's not going to
It's
happen
going to
though.
be based off of margin. Remember, money talks. We've already gotten over that
So,
podcast segment.
right, and I get what your point is, and I understand why you're thinking that, but let's look at Apple specifically. This is a company that obsesses over the user experience of using the phone, right? Their cheapest phone is still made out of glass and metal, right? Every other company's cheap phones are made out of plastic. Apple obsesses over every little detail, but they'll remove big things. They'll remove the headphone jack. They'll remove the SIM card slot if they don't think you need it. But that those people at the Super Bowl, they're all in the Super Bowl. They're getting millimeter wave, and it's a great time. Imagine, let's say, in 4 or 5 years, right, when a lot of people have non-millimeter wave iPhones, and they're all in a crowded space like the Super Bowl or whatever. That's not going to be a good experience. That's not going to be the seamless experience Apple is going for.
We got two different issues that we're talking about here. As far as PSIM goes, the consumer doesn't care about PSIM at all, period. And so like the US is not a good reflection of this, but the reason why PSIM's not going to go away is because in other places eSIM adoption hasn't taken off like it did here in the United States. Especially when we start talking about developing countries like India, China, uh, and places like that. So
Well, you know why that is,
as
Dennis?
as far
You know why?
yes, I do.
Yeah,
But
because everyone's using like $200 Xiaomi's, which try to
no,
cut costs at every turn to get the best specs possible. So they'll cut costs in little areas they don't think matter.
no,
So that's why a lot of people are still using, PSIM only phones, right? Look
no.
on
Well,
AliExpress, find a Xiaomi or a Realme or whatever. It probably won't support eSIM.
that's the case for places like India and China, but that's not the case for Europe. But anyway,
Right.
so
Yes.
that's the but that for so for the sim issue, that's that. And then as far as the millimeter wave goes, look, Apple's not going to remove millimeter wave here in the United States, at least. Um, and the reason for that is because Verizon wouldn't stand for that. Verizon can very easily leverage the fact that they'd be like, well, you know what, we won't subsidize the phone, or they'll do some other tactic that states why they wouldn't do that. And Apple's not going to do something that's going to make them lose out on sales revenue. And I don't see them going back to a period of having two different SKUs of iPhone anytime soon, especially since they're trying to unify under Apple Silicon everything. Um, so I don't see millimeter wave going out the way. But uh, I want to circle back to the article real quick that Sneed still has up when we were
Mhm.
talking about the FCC.
Yeah, go ahead.
And specifically, I want to talk about the unlock policy because that's what everyone was talking about in the chat. I have a hot take that no one's gonna like me for, but do
Not
you want
about
to know?
takes.
No, I'm being serious. No one's gonna like me, but do you want to know you want to know the easiest way to solve the unlock policy debate?
Yeah, man.
Go
I know
ahead.
it.
Stop subsidizing phones.
I was gonna
No, I'm
say
being
buying your phone
Dennis,
serious.
outright.
I've
stop.
been saying
I'm
Dennis,
saying stop subsidizing
Dennis,
phones. You don't want to have to deal with carrier locking. Pay for the phone. Pay for the phone.
It won't
well,
happen
you know what, Dennis?
because in this country, people get to have the cake and eat it too. Which is why, me personally, I don't even understand why carriers are forced to unlock phones before the phones are paid off anyway. You're already getting a interest-free loan spread out over 36 months. Like
No,
in addition to that, now they have to unlock the phone after, for example, 60 days, before the phone's even paid for.
Yeah, but
So
look at how desperate the
that's
carriers
even
are, they'll be. They're so desperate to get lines, to get people to switch to them, to get people to stay with them. They're willing to give them $1,000 or more towards their next upgrade by trading in some old piece of crap that's busted up, the battery is failing, the screen is cracked. I mean, this is desperate shit in order to get people to upgrade their phones with these carriers.
well.
So
I
it's
mean,
it's it's
I
it's
mean,
ironic.
I think
It's
there's truth to
ironic.
that.
I think it's ironic that the carrier says things like we'd rather not give people phones, but then they get very aggressive with their promotions in order to get people to stay with them.
Well, I mean, if they don't, customers will complain. Customers will go to regulators. The next thing you
Since
know,
when since when
it's
did carriers
regulation.
since when did carriers care about customers' feelings, bro? The same carriers that just raised prices 3 months prior will do it again and again and again. And then say things like, well, this one's called an economic adjustment fee. This next one is a different surcharge,
exactly.
telco and
No,
recovery
exactly.
fee. And now we're gonna do
And
the plans, and then we're gonna hit the legacy.
yeah,
They don't, it's not,
yeah,
bro, they're
bro.
operating a business. They don't
That's
care
how
about the customer.
Well, I
that's
mean,
how they
customers don't care
squeezed
about companies either.
30% of
There's
Verizon
no love
customers to my
lost.
plan.
There's no love lost on either side. Like there's no love song on either side. So I agree with you there. It's not like customers treat companies really well and they just get bashed. No, that's not how it works either. Like that, there's visceral on both sides. So to your point, I understand where you're coming from, but from a business standpoint, let's take the feelings out of it. Would you provide an interest-free loan over 36 months and
It's
then
not a
allow
free
a
loan,
customer?
B.
It is
B.
a free
No, it
loan.
is not a free. No,
The
it's
reason
not.
why
It is not a free
it's a
loan.
free loan.
No, it is not a free loan.
The reason why it's a free loan is because there's no interest on it. So what loan can
There
you
is
go
interest
and
on it
get?
because you're paying
What loan can
30
you
because you're
go?
paying
What loan can you go and get from any bank in the world over 36
B.
months and get 0% interest? You
B.
couldn't
Actually,
B.
get that.
my
You
angle's a little
It's
couldn't
not
get
different.
that.
0% interest.
You
B.
couldn't get
You know
that
how they
during
make
the
their interest back
pandemic.
on that loan?
You
You
couldn't
know
get
how you
that during
make
the
their interest.
pandemic, Max.
B. Okay, B. You know how they make their interest back on that loan by charging absurd rates for the plans compared
It's
to
not
Yeah,
very
absurd.
but
It's not.
comparable,
no. Hold
very
Listen,
on,
similar
man.
MVNOs.
The loan
B.
itself is 36 months,
B.
0% interest. Come
B. Let me get in
on.
here. Let me get in here real quick. Max, do you know how long it takes for the carrier on average to even reach a break even point after they've given out all the promotional credits and everything else like that? Do you know how long it takes for the carrier to actually hit a break even point before they're actually starting to turn a profit when they subsidize devices and everything else?
How long does it take?
18 months. Takes 18
Okay.
months. And
Okay.
that's assuming that they have like unlimited welcome or something, because that's what most consumers are going for. They're not going for the premium
Okay.
plans, they're going for entry level stuff. It takes 18 months unless they get some
Okay.
other types of add-ons.
Okay. So, but they're not subsidizing a phone. They're not loaning their money. They're not doing any
What?
of that. If you're just paying
What?
$30 a month for a plan instead, if you're just
Okay.
paying 30 or 40 bucks a month and you buy your phone at full price,
If
which
the
will end up, at
customers,
least for one line, being cheaper over time,
if there
then
were
there's no
customers
risk on
in
either
like,
side.
if there were customers at scale who were willing to pay $3,000 for a phone up front, you don't think the carriers would
What,
be okay with
3,000?
that?
3,000? Where are you getting 3,000 from?
I'm
How many
sorry,
phones,
Max.
B?
You say whatever phone price you want.
A thousand
Customers
bucks?
customers weren't willing to pay $6.99 back when it was $6.99, $7.99, $8.99 for the iPhones. They didn't want to pay that,
My
myself
problem be
included. So
so
with that
so
being said, There's a lot of people who simply
but in
don't want to pay
reality,
that price point.
it's an illusion, B. You gotta understand. I don't. This is just an example. It's not like factual or anything. I could definitely make plenty of factual examples on this. But let's just say you got Plan A, $30 a month from an MVNO. You know, no phone subsidy included with the plan. Then you go to an MNO, you get a plan, 75, $80, we'll call it, and that includes the subsidy for phone. It, that's interest.
No, it's not. That's the cost of the service. The
Okay,
cost of the service is the cost of the service. But the
we're
phone
talking.
itself
We're talking.
costs X amount of dollars,
We're
and
talking about two
you
comparable
spread that.
plans.
You know, the cost of the phone is the cost of the phone, and that particular price point is spread out over 36 months at 0% interest. It's two different transactions, Max.
The
It's the
interest
cost of
is the
service. It's the
crazy price
cost.
of the plan.
No, it's not.
No, it's not, because
The cost of the
that money
plan is the
is
cost of the
also
plan.
you have to remember, Max, that there are other operational costs outside of the phone
I get
that
that.
your plan pays for. It's not just the phone.
Right, but every
You got to pay
every
for the
carrier
stores,
has.
pay for the
Yeah, I get that.
employees, pay for all
Yeah.
of the other things that go on back of house to get that phone to that store that you purchased. It's a very razor thin margin at this point.
I wouldn't go that far. It's not razor thin either. So once the customer hits 18 months of tenure and they have now hit the middle point, now the profit margin is pretty healthy. It's around, I believe it's around 45%.
Exactly,
But
Dennis.
It takes 18 months to get there.
it's a time and numbers game. So the upfront cost has gone up astronomically to acquire customers in the United States. I think Verizon's sending somewhere on average around, is it around like $3,000 or $4,000 to acquire every new postpaid customer now? I think it's something like that. B, does that sound like about right as a number?
Yep, and it's exactly why, to your point, you know, a company like a Verizon isn't, you know, in a hurry to leave the industry and grow, because look at the numbers. Look at what's been reported by T-Mobile. Like, yo, they have all this growth and they make the least amount of money versus that of their competitors, and that includes big cable, which is crazy to me. They're not really making money off these customers, and they're having to give away their service to achieve that growth, which
So
means
B,
they're
there's
not
two
even
parts
really
that can be
confident.
true. There's two parts can be true here. They are making money. Hold up, they are making money. All right, Verizon's not a charity. They are making money. I'm just
I
saying
was talking about T-Mobile.
the time period has gone up for how long it takes to get a return on investment from the consumer, at least in the consumer space, on new customers. And it's 18 months. And I'm just trying to say that the service cost that Max is touching on is, I mean, there's a reason why the prices are the way the prices are. Like prepaid gets to be cheap because there is no devices. In fact, I'm willing to bet you very good money, and B and everyone else can agree to disagree with me on this. But if there was some magical world where we resembled more like Europe, and we
Oh boy.
didn't subsidize phone, hold up, if we didn't subsidize phone costs, I'm willing to bet you that we would see postpaid prices actually deflate in terms of
Exactly.
pricing.
Agreed.
If there
Yep.
was no phone financing like at all.
But again, the customers in Europe are willing to pay full price for their phones. The American people collectively are not. That's the reason why prepaid still comes far second to postpaid. Most customers in this country are postpaid customers. Why? Because they have the ability to get a phone that costs $1,000 plus and have someone else pay for it for them. Like Sneed just got finished saying it. So, like, there's a reason why margins, for example, in the telco space, particularly in the MNOs, are tighter than they ever have been. 10, 15 years ago, margins weren't nearly as tight as they are now.
10,
Like
15 years ago,
Dennis
MNOs were
just
making like a 70% profit margin, which was
exactly.
insane.
Dennis just alluded to it. How much does it cost just to acquire one customer? These prices are astronomical. So when you have a company, for example, like a Verizon, who chooses not to play in that sandbox as much, and to focus on growing their revenues, growing their profitability, it makes sense. They seem to be operating like a company that's got $149 billion worth of debt. I mean, I'm just
Yeah, but
saying, if you
B
got a bill that's that big,
to compare to 10 years ago is ludicrous because back then telco was basically charging monopoly pricing. Like no other industry ever had profit margins like that. No other industry. So that
well,
was
that's
actually not good. And also I'll just follow up by saying that telco kind of did this to themselves, right? The fact of the matter is if telco invested in or created the next big thing, the Uber of sorts for telco, then they wouldn't have to lean so heavily into subsidization of devices to acquire customers. If there was some new solution or product that Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, whoever, insert company of your choice, was able to provide and only could do so on their network, if they actually had a revenue generating product, then they wouldn't have to lean so heavily into this in order to acquire customers in this highly saturated market. And that
impossible to
hasn't
do.
come.
Impossible to do. That's impossible to do. And the reason why is because the telco industry has always been overregulated. Meanwhile, a company like, for example, a Google or a Facebook has the ability to access way more consumer data, even than that of a Verizon or an AT&T. Yet they're almost not regulated at all, to the tune of all these billions of dollars that they now have the ability to be able to accrue because they have access to all of this data that they can sell. Meanwhile, in comparison, when the telcos try to enter into those spaces and serve as competition to those particular entities, what happened? They got their hands slapped. They weren't allowed to access that consumer data. And because of that, those carriers chose to sell those assets off.
And yet,
Carriers have tried to innovate. What's been the issue with innovation in that particular space, in that particular industry? It's been regulation.
and
Regulators
yet,
haven't allowed the telcos to be able to operate the same way that, for example, a Google or a Facebook did.
and
If
yet
the
I'm gonna
rules were
have
if
to
the rules
disagree with
were
you
if the
entirely,
rules
B.
if the rules were the same across the industries, then you wouldn't have Facebook or Google doing what it is that they're able to do and accruing the wealth that they're able to accrue. They have almost zero regulation compared to that of a telco. Telcos do not have access to do what you just said, which is innovate, which is the
B,
reason why, to your point,
I'm gonna
they've been
have to
allowed to do what
disagree
they
with you.
do,
Gonna have to disagree with you. You wanna know why? Because telcos have other flanker companies that they've either acquired or created in order to try to compete. They just failed. They
such
just
as
failed. Okay, let's take Comcast for example. Comcast has Zumo, right? Zumo was an ad-supported like streaming service similar to Pluto TV. They like offered like a bunch of live TV stations, yada 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 yada, right? That was like Comcast's answer to trying to compete in the streaming space, but it flopped. It
mhm,
flopped.
mhm,
Um, Comcast also tried to get into the whole streaming of gaming, kind of like how Nvidia Shield existed in Google. What was Google's one called where they
Stadia.
let you stream? Thank you, Stadia, right? Comcast tried to do that too. No one talks about it. No one even probably realizes it, but they tried to. They're even partnering up with like Activision Blizzard with like Overwatch and a bunch of other stuff, and they flopped. And it happened all under different companies that weren't necessarily under the Comcast brand, and they all flopped, right? Verizon's tried to take their hat in the game with other stuff too, not necessarily under the Verizon brand either. I mean, there's even products to this day that are kind of remnants from things that Verizon experimented with. Look at Verizon
Blue
Cloud
jeans.
Storage.
Blue jeans.
Blue Jeans, yeah, Blue Jeans, Verizon Cloud
Is it
Storage.
trash or trash?
So
the cloud storage
it's
actually
not
works
that
pretty well.
telco companies couldn't do whatever because of regulations. It's because by the time telco moved to enter, A, they didn't have like they were losing the first market players who had first market advantage, and B, the solutions that the telco companies have been providing have been inadequate. They're not good. Like they just strict they're just not. Like every one of these solutions that telco tried to introduce always had some kind of catch. Either you had to be with them to use the product, you lost access to it if you weren't with them. Like there was always these different hooks that require you to be bundled. And I'm not saying that convergence isn't good, right? Like we could see today, convergence between fixed wireless and wireless is actually really good right now for growth for say like AT&T with the fiber customer and then becoming wireless. I'm not saying that's not an end goal move, but when you're introducing yourself into new markets and new spaces, you have to play a little bit different. You're not this dominant player with other pressuring factors to retain the consumer. And telco hasn't learned that lesson. They still try to move and act like they don't have competition, but not only are you competing with United States companies and a lot of these spaces, you're competing with the whole globe, and the solutions, pricing, all these other factors were just not competitive solutions. They just
Good
weren't.
point, Dennis.
You cannot, you can't create a competitive solution in the spaces or in the sects that you're talking about if you don't have the capex to do so.
Tell me right.
We have an MNO that tried to do that, and you guys still joke about Randall Stevenson to this day.
Tell me.
So
Tell me right
it's
now.
not like attempts haven't been made.
Tell me right now, B, how a startup company that would run on debt for the last 10 years end up becoming literally one of the first $1 trillion companies in the United States, and I'm referring to Amazon with their AWS, and they could pull it off.
How much debt did they have? How much debt did they have? Was it 149 billion?
What do you mean?
In order for them to be able to, you're right, and I agree. But was it 149 billion? In order for them to be able to acquire the assets that they needed to become the Amazon of today, did they have to spend $52 billion on one single asset? How about $40 billion?
B, the difference here is that Amazon was willing to not turn a profit. The difference here, B, is that Amazon was willing to not turn a profit and forgo short-term monetary gains, whereas Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T just won't. And there's many reasons. And there's many reasons for it. There's many reasons for it. There's many reasons for it. One of them includes shareholder pressure, because shareholders don't want to stomach that. But it's not.
The network can't stomach it either.
But it's a boohoo sad story. If you want to go into a new business sector that you haven't been in, right? Like there is no reason why Verizon couldn't have been an AWS competitor. They already have all the infrastructure technically in place. In fact, it's so synergistic, it's so harmonious that it makes a lot of logical sense. There is a world where if Verizon was a lot more willing to stomach risk, invest in the capex, whatever, they could have had an AWS competing solution.
I agree with that, because AT&T is the same way. Every single central office, every single main building, main switch hub could have had a data center, and it would have been easier for them to do that. The problem is, to Dennis's point, the capex was not diverted to do that, number one. Number two, you need to have hardened structures. Not only just hardened structures, but you also need to have the cooling. The floors need to be significantly reinforced. And that's not what either carrier wanted to do, but they had the abilities to do so.
No, they didn't. And the reason why I say they didn't is because, again, when you divert capex away from your core business in the telco industry, you get Randall Stevenson. You guys joke about Randall Stevenson all the time, and I'm the only one who's ever defended him for the decision that which was exactly what you just said. Moose, you just said it, and Dennis, you just said it. Randall Stevenson was trying to go outside of the core business and expand into something else.
Stevenson went into the same thing that telco's been doing this whole time. It wasn't new. They were going back into bed with media, and he was going into it dying. The writing was already on the board about where satellite TV was going to go.
I'm not talking about satellite. I'm not talking about that. I agree that DirecTV was a horrible purchase, but I'm not talking about that specifically. What I'm talking about is media, ownership of what's going through the pipe, which is what the investor community and even employees within these respective businesses have been saying needs to happen forever.
Yeah, but it wasn't smart. It was good money chasing bad.
As soon as Randall Stevenson did that and it didn't work, now we fast forward to today. The capex was reallocated to something that didn't work. Fast forward to today. Now we have AT&T, which used to be a behemoth. They're the third largest carrier in the country.
Hey, B, let
they're
me
the third
ask
largest.
You something.
What are we talking about? They're the third largest. They're the third largest carrier in the country. they have the smallest mid-band footprint in the country as well from a 5G standpoint. That's where they are right now as a result of Stevenson. And you guys joke about it all the
Yeah, but they
time.
got the most fiber miles run in the country. That's
Nobody
pretty good.
cares, Sneed. They're trading at $19. Nobody
You
cares that
getting
they
louder
have that.
doesn't
Like,
make the point more important. I get what you're saying. Now let me ask you an important question real fast, okay? In the data server space, okay, and in cloud hosting space, what's one of the most expensive reoccurring costs that Amazon, Microsoft with Azure, and whomever have? What's one of the most expensive costs for them?
I don't know what.
Data transit. It's a
Okay.
cost that won't go away.
How much does it
Electric,
cost?
data transit, and storage are the
How
three
much?
biggest costs.
How much does it cost them? Just a guesstimate.
Uh, Data transit probably costs them about 20% of their capex spend.
And how much is that? Like, how much is
I,
their capex?
I don't know what the actual like hard number is, but I know as a percentage, it's about 20% of their capex spend just goes to data transit.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So,
So
do you go ahead? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm
Continue.
mentioning this point because Verizon, if they would have got into that space, or AT&T, or T-Mobile, or Comcast, or whoever would have got into that space, that is an area where they would have a competitive advantage because they already have, as Moose touched on, the central offices and all the ability to run the fiber wherever they want. In fact, they can pick to go to places that have cheaper land. That's another factor than an Amazon could because they can run all their own fiber that they want and make sure that they're getting the correct ping times and everything else that's required for the companies that they be serving from said data center. Instead of focusing on like media, which isn't new, these telco companies really could have had a competitive advantage in the data hosting space. In fact, we're seeing data centers ramp up astronomically right now. If you actually pay attention to the sector, it is ramping up astronomically because data needs are completely not met. Like the demand for more data centers for various companies and various reasons is higher than ever before. It's still a not satiated space. It's one of the there's so much growth happening here, and you're seeing companies that were able to be smart and position themselves to be ready for this space, like Nvidia, profit astronomically. But telco is still sitting on the wayside. They're still sitting on the wayside. I don't see telco companies coming up with any solutions to be like, you know what? We're the provider to do this with. We are the literal only choice. If you want to run data centers and meet your needs, we're the only one. We got end-to-end transit from the United States to all these different countries. We have it ready for from East Coast to West Coast. We come up with creative solutions to make sure that you can get latency down over here in the middle of bum Egypt and Nebraska instead of having to put your data center in the expensive city of Nebraska or expensive city of New York, excuse me. Like I don't see any creative solutions coming about from telco, and there's plenty of money to be had whether they want to be a company that does it themselves or be a participating player to generate more revenue from it. They're just sticking to the same old, which is dumb pipes. Dumb pipes that don't do anything, and it's not a regulations problem.
I completely disagree.
I
And
100% agree with Dennis, honestly. 100%.
and that's okay. And I respect that. I'll stand by myself on this one. I 100% disagree. Just because I know that carriers have been in the in the data center portion of the industry for a long time. It wasn't profitable, so they sold it off. And a lot of that is because they got undercut from a pricing standpoint by the people like the Amazons and the Googles of the world,
But there's no world where they
who
should be
don't have
getting
to spend.
undercut, B. There's no world where they should be being undercut. They out of the big three costs, the carriers don't have to worry about data transit. The only two they have to worry about is electric and storage. Storage is a space question for land, which because of the fact that they can run their own fiber, they can pick cheaper locations for land, and then electric. And electric, that's a cost that everyone's going to have to deal with. But again, because the carriers can actually dictate where the backhaul gets ran and where the hops are and all the other fun facts for controlling how the traffic gets routed on their network, they could also help with the electric cost. They could pick places that have cheaper electric. They could go with solar. There's tons of stuff to also reduce that cost as well in the long term. The short
Already in
answer
place.
is
You also have
that carriers have no stomach to do anything that doesn't provide a short-term return on investment because they just don't have the stomach for it. And if they want to make the big money like long-term growth wise, then that's the type of investments that need to happen, and it can't be in the stupid dinosaur things like media. And that's the only thing that carriers have been doing is they've been throwing money, they've been throwing good money at old bad ideas, and then they complain and they whine when it doesn't turn into something super profitable, even though media is not new in any form, shape, or anything like that. And
Neither are
media
data centers.
also is a dying asset. It's
Neither are
expensive to
neither are
produce.
data centers. Data centers
What
aren't
do you
new.
mean?
It's not a new concept. Data centers aren't new. They've been around
But
for many years, many
but
decades.
data centers are hardened infrastructure. Media,
Agreed.
you're investing millions upon millions of dollars for a new TV series that will be popular maybe for a couple years. Maybe once in a while you might get really, really lucky. You might strike it rich with a Disney classic wonder that goes on for generations. But overall, you're spending a lot of money on something that might be popular for a couple years, has to be advertised and all these other things just to get it in front of some eyeballs. Whereas with a data center, it's hardened infrastructure that can either A, help the carriers in their own organic business. Like, you think Verizon's not paying buku bucks right now to Microsoft or Google or to someone to host a bunch of their services. So one, it can help reduce their own operational costs. And two, it is a product that has a very clear, unsatiated met demand for more, because the current incumbent players aren't able to produce enough data center capacity to satiate the needs of the country. And that's just the United States that we're talking about.
Which consumes more data than anybody. Who's growing data rates faster than America is?
South Korea.
Come
Well,
on, man. They got like
the other
square miles is like the size of what? Massachusetts. What are we talking about right now? Come on, man.
well here let
Be
me
honest.
add on to that then. So one of the big things in order to increase efficiency and performance for services is to bring the compute closer to the customer. Who has
Agreed.
infrastructure closest to the customer?
Telcos.
Exactly. Who has buildings? Who has shelters? Who has fiber closest to the customer? It's the telcos. They have a huge opportunity. It's
I mean,
just that
there's a
it,
telco that's to your point, talking about that stuff and have been talking about it since 2018. Like
yeah,
him, I mean, but it hasn't taken off yet. Why hasn't it taken off? Because that particular product is expensive to the market in the market's eyes. So they've gone to other things, like for example, private networks instead. So mobile edge compute, that's something that has been a thing. That's an innovation, and I mean, it hasn't taken off yet. Intelligent edge, and all of those things are around, and they're being touted, and they're being built, and they're available, but they have not yet taken off because of how costly it is. So listen, guys, I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I think that what's being said definitely make valid points. I don't completely disagree, but at the same time, I'm firm in my stance that regulation has been a a a deterrent to telcos being able to innovate the way that they could and the way that they should. And there's an uneven regulation across the industry as it pertains to what you have, for example, with a Google or a Facebook, who touches just as many eyeballs, if not just as many accounts, more accounts than even a Verizon or an AT&T, because they touch everybody's stuff. Who doesn't have a Google Gmail?
Yeah, but
So
B,
they
I'm
touch
gonna say it
everybody's stuff, and
again.
they
I'm gonna say something again real quick, because I've had this conversation with you in private. Every time we talk about the telco, you always compare it to Google or Facebook or other companies that are holistically outside of the sector, like doing completely different things, right? They're
I can
offering
use
over
other
the top.
examples. They're all over
Hold
the
on,
top
hold on,
solutions.
hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. They're offering over the top services, but you always ignore the fact that there was plenty of things that were within the sphere of telco to do that also synergistically align with the things that they're already doing. I mentioned data centers because data centers as a whole very much falls within the things that telco already has to do. It's going back to their core business of running fiber. It's going back to the core business of having to find locations that need to be secure with like backup power and all these different things. These all fall under the realm of things that telco already does. Telco just refused to do it. And I'm also pointing out that specific example here because data centers can generate a huge amount of continual guaranteed revenue.
But they haven't.
Once you get someone to be using your data centers, there's not really a world where they can just move because as I think it was Zero Cool touched on, location matters a lot. If you're the only person that has a data center in the middle of Nebraska that can serve insert certain customer base with for some latency sensitive applications, there's not a world where they can pick someone else. It's not like other spaces. These data centers that are being built right now have already had their capacity booked up, locked down in contracts like 5 years in advance now. That's how hungry the market is for data centers. It is free pickings of money.
I
The
don't
care
disagree. But what I'm saying is that the carriers have had data centers and they haven't been profitable to the tune that you're talking about, that you're alluding to. That's why many of the telcos have sold some of their data center assets off because they haven't been profitable to the same degree as what you have with other companies. And some of that is because of regulation of what can be done with that data. The telcos don't have the same capability to be able to manipulate that data and to be able to extract that data and to be able to sell it or do whatever it is. They don't have the ability to do that.
they don't
Only the guys,
have to
only
They
the
sell
don't
the
only
have
data.
they
They
don't
don't
have
have
to though.
to.
I'm not saying that they do, guys. They can just transmit it. You're right. But to that point, the telcos have been in that industry for many years. And for whatever reason, that particular portion of their industry was not profitable enough for them to keep those assets. That's why many of them have been sold off. And it hasn't just been one company. So I'm not, that's why I said I don't completely disagree because I think what you're saying has merit. However, I also believe what I'm saying has merit as well. And it's not something that's come just from me. The regulation in this country with respect to the telecommunications industry versus over the top solutions providers, such as a Google or you fill it in. If you don't like my examples, you fill
B.
in
I'm gonna I'm
whatever over
gonna
the
I'm
top
gonna be a
solution you
little
you
I'm
want to.
gonna be a little extreme so you can understand what I'm saying. The way that
It's
you're
not a
I'm
lack
not
of
saying what
understanding.
you're saying. I'm not saying what you're saying doesn't hold a kernel of truth, but it would be like me if I was it'd be like me being McDonald's, okay? I'm McDonald's. It'd be like me complaining about how Exxon Mobil, the oil generating company, gets to just rake in year after year profits off of whatever and being like, see, they were able to innovate because they got to do fracking and all these incentives from the government. And I'm over here selling burgers and I'm not happy with my profit margins. Like it's so night and day. It's so night and day different. Like it's so night and day different. And if I'm McDonald's, well, what's another way that I can profit? Oh, well, McDonald's has their whole real estate company, right? They're selling all the franchise agreements. They found a way to make more money that isn't just flipping and selling burgers, right? Telco is my McDonald's in this scenario right now. Right now, Telco has been selling burgers for years, and that works, and they make a